What is going on, everybody? Hope everyone is doing well. My name is Jason, and in today's video, we're going to be previewing and predicting Week 13 of the 2023 CFL season. Labor Day weekend is upon us, ladies and gentlemen. And I think if you were to look at this slate a couple of weeks ago, some of these matchups would have looked a lot more lopsided. Some of them still, you could argue, still do, but I think at the end of the day, all of these matchups have some level of intrigue to them this weekend, and that's really all you can ask for if you're the CFL. Really excited for this week of games. So starting off Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we have the 7-4 BC Lions visiting the 6-4 Montreal Alouettes, and these teams have kind of went in the same direction the past couple of weeks. Montreal had a very disappointing effort against Winnipeg last week. BC, of course, coming off back-to-back very disappointing losses to Saskatchewan and Hamilton. So both of these teams looking to bounce back in some capacity. And the players that I'm watching in this one, for BC, it's linebacker Bo Lacombo, who, I mean, he hasn't had a poor season by any stretch, but I think that he hasn't had too many impactful plays like sacks or interceptions or whatnot. He was a former most outstanding Canadian back in 2021, so I think he's a guy that I'm looking for this defense to really make a big play this weekend because he's going up against his former team in Montreal, and he is a guy, like I said, that has the pedigree of being a playmaker back there in the linebacking core. So excited to see what Bo Lacombo does this weekend for kind of a struggling BC Lions defense the past couple of weeks. And then for Montreal, I'm going with William Stanback, running back, who is one of the best running backs in the league, at least from resume perspective, but he hasn't really been that for the most part the past couple of seasons. He's had a couple of good games this year, but I think overall he has left a lot to be desired. So looking forward to seeing if he can take advantage of a BC Lions run defense that really got carved up by James Butler from Hamilton last week. So I'm really excited to see what happens in this game. I think this is going to be a pretty close game. This is, of course, the game that, the other three games are more known for being rivalries, but BC is usually the team that gets left out Labor Day weekend. Usually Ottawa plays Montreal Labor Day weekend, but BC is playing Montreal this week. So interested to see how this rivalry game turns out, and I think at the end of the day, in terms of my pick for this one, I think it's going to be extremely close, like I said. But I'm going to take the BC Lions to finally break that two-game losing streak, win 27-20 on the road in Montreal. It's been a tough place for them to play traditionally, but I think BC has the mental makeup to go in there and get a victory. Montreal has not beaten one of the big three teams, if you will, in the CFL so far this season, so I'm kind of waiting for them to do that before I have any faith in picking them in one of these matches against BC, Toronto, or Winnipeg. So I'm going to take BC to beat Montreal on the road. Now moving on to Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we have the 9-2 Winnipeg Blue Bombers visiting the 5-5 Saskatchewan Roughriders. Of course, a huge rivalry, probably the biggest rivalry in the CFL today. And I think in terms of this game, it kind of looks a little bit lopsided on paper. Would have looked a lot more lopsided before Saskatchewan's upset victory a couple of weeks ago against BC. But Saskatchewan coming off a bye, but has some positive momentum from a couple of weeks ago with that victory. So I think that they have a snowball's chance of competing in this game. Of course, they have the home crowd behind them. Winnipeg, of course, really rounding into form the last several weeks. Look like the best team in the CFL, arguably up there with the Toronto Argonauts. So I think in terms of the players that I'm watching in this one, defensive lineman Ricky Walker, defensive tackle that is, for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, has been a guy that's really stood out to me so far this year. I mean, he gets overshadowed by all the other star players they have on that defense, but I think he's been very effective getting a push from the inside of that defensive line, and Saskatchewan's offensive line has had some struggles this season, so I'm looking forward to seeing if Ricky Walker can make a difference this week for Winnipeg. And then for Saskatchewan, I'm going with another defensive player, and that is defensive back Nick Marshall, who I think is having a very good season at corner. He's a guy that's been very inconsistent throughout his CFL career, has given up a lot of big plays over the years, but also has made a lot of big plays with big-time interceptions. Had a couple of big-time interceptions earlier this season in key moments for the Rough Riders, so I'm interested to see if Nick Marshall can have a game-changing play in this one like he often does. So in terms of who is going to win this game, I think that Saskatchewan likely keeps it close in the first half, but I think Winnipeg ultimately pulls away and wins this game 30-21 is the final score I'm going with the Bombers taking it. Now moving on to our Monday doubleheader, starting at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, we have the 8-1 Toronto Argos visiting the 4-6 Hamilton Tiger Cats. And this is another game, like I was saying with Saskatchewan, a couple of weeks ago, this game was not looked at as being a very competitive game, possibly. So I think that with the way that Toronto dominated the first couple of matchups so far this season between these two teams, not a lot of people were looking forward to this game, at least from the Ticats fans that I've talked to. But the big win over BC last week gives some positive momentum behind the Ticats going into this week. And the Argos defense really got carved up by Jake Maier and the Stampeders last week. So maybe there's a possibility for an upset here. Hamilton has traditionally won a lot on Labor Day against the Argos, with the Argos really winning their first game at Tim Hortons Field, I believe it was last year on Labor Day. So really interested to see how this one plays out and if it's a much closer game than most of us are expecting. In terms of the players I'm watching, I'm going with Tavares Daniels for the Toronto Argonauts. He's had a really, really strong season so far, and I think that he's on pace to have his best season of his CFL career. I think he's a guy that has always had the potential to be a top 10 receiver in this league and a 1,000-yard guy, but he's never, to this date, I do believe that he's never had 1,000 yards in a CFL season, but I think he's going to reach there this year, and I think he has great chemistry with his quarterback, Chad Kelly, this year. He's connected on a number of deep passes this year, and look for him to get another one of those in this game against a pretty weak Hamilton Tiger Cats secondary. And then for Hamilton, I'm going with a guy that may be trying to stop him in Kenneth George Jr., who I think has been one of their better defensive backs this season amongst a pretty poor secondary. I think that he had a couple of rough starts to begin the season as a true rookie corner in the CFL, but I think he's kind of stabilized himself since then and has been one of their better players back there in that unit, like I mentioned. So it'll be interesting to see if these two players are matched up at any point during this game. I definitely think there's a good possibility of that with George being a boundary corner and Daniels being a boundary side wide receiver. So interested to see how that plays out. In terms of who is going to win this game, I'm definitely going to pick the Argos to win this game, but I think it's going to be a very, very close game. Just strange things seem to happen on Labor Day at Tim Hortons Field when you take away what happened last year between these two teams when it was, I forget who was starting. Jamie Newman started for the Ticats in his first career CFL start. Did not go very well, to say the least. I think that Taylor Powell making his, I believe it's his fourth CFL start, fifth CFL start in this one. I think he'll be more prepared than Newman was last year at the very least. This is actually the second time that Powell is going to be matched up against this Argos defense, so I'm interested to see how he plays in this one. I think at the end of the day, the Argos still take it with a final score of 24-22. Or a speedy field goal wins it for them at the end, and ultimately the Argos go to 9-1 on the season. Now moving on to the finale of Week 13 in the CFL. Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we have the 2-9 Edmonton Elks visiting the 3-8 Calgary Stampeders. A very interesting game in this one, given the two directions these teams have gone in the last couple of weeks here. Edmonton kind of getting their season back together as much as the 2-9 team can get their season back together, and Calgary heading in the complete opposite direction, really slumping lately. So interested to see how this one plays out. Sweep either way, because these two teams actually play next week as well. If either of these teams can go 2-0 against each other in this stretch, it could be a season-defining stretch for either of these teams. So very interested to see how this one plays out. Either of these teams can get themselves back into the playoff race with a sweep in this season series. In terms of players that I'm watching in this one, running back Kevin Brown for the Edmonton Elks, I think he's really improved his production and efficiency since Trey Ford was named the starting quarterback. So excited to see what he can do in this one. Perhaps he breaks another 70-yard run like he did a couple of weeks ago against Winnipeg. And then for Calgary, I'm going with a pair of linebackers, Cameron Judge and Micah Alway, two guys that will be tasked with chasing down Trey Ford when he scrambles. I think a couple of those key plays, if they can chase him down in this one, could be game-deciding plays in this one. So I think at the end of the day, those are some players that I'm watching in this one in terms of the matchups. I think this is a very intriguing game. Very hard game to predict. I think it's going to be very, very close. And with both teams heading in opposite directions, I think I'm just going to ride the wave of momentum and go with the Edmonton Elks to win their third game in a row here. 31-29. I think it's going to be a very, very close game. Like I said, Calgary won't go down without a fight, I don't think, but I think at the end of the day, Edmonton gets the win and goes to 3-9 on the season and keeps their faint playoff hopes alive. But with that said, that is just your preview for Week 13 of the 2023 CFL season. Be sure to drop a like if you enjoyed, and with that said, hope you guys have a great day. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.